Welcome to Firearms Friday at the Wyoming State Museum in Cheyenne. I'm firearms historian Evan Green, and this is the fourth and hopefully the last of a series of videos that I've done about Tom Horn. I spent a lot of time researching Horn in order to answer some questions that the museum staff had about the authenticity of some 20 objects that we had in the museum's collection that were attributed to Tom Horn. And those first two videos are ones that address those artifacts. And I was just stunned. I feel like I know quite a bit about Tom Horn. Again, Larry Ball and Chip Carlson and others, as well as a lot of online research. I felt I knew quite a bit about Tom Horn and his history, and I mentioned in one of those, maybe both of those, that there was a lot of misinformation out there. So the working title of this presentation would be Myths, Lies, and Misconceptions about Tom Horn. And unfortunately, a lot of the inaccuracies, lies, and misstatements come from this book, which was written by Tom Horn while he was in jail in the Laramie County Jail in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And a lot of subsequent authors and writers took this as truth. Larry Ball, bless his heart, said this should be read as a work of fiction because the dates are wrong. Horn exaggerates his role in Arizona in the pursuit of Geronimo, and you just can't believe hardly anything that he says. But I give some people credit, that a lot of these early writers did not have access to the fact-checking tools that I have, the wonders of the internet. So I give them some excuse, but again, it's difficult to see these mistakes. So here's a few examples, and I don't have these in chronological order, but Horn left home at age 14 to escape an abusive father. Various sources, including Chip Carlson and Horn's autobiography, make that statement, that he left at age 14. Family history says it was more likely that it was his later teens, and we'll discuss some of those time frames in a minute in a different section. I did quite a bit of research, and I developed a timeline. Horn was born in 1860. If he left at 14, that would have been 1874. He was executed in 1903. So I developed a timeline year by year of where he was. And that doesn't mean he was in that location for the entire year, but nothing about Arizona shows up until 1881. And he was in Missouri at age 19 to have his infected tonsils removed. That was one of them. And this was a conspiracy theory that started shortly after Horn was hanged. Tom Horn escaped his execution because authorities in league with the cattle barons arranged to hang a transient that they picked up at the railroad yards. Well, that guy had bad luck if this was true, but it's not. And this is from various sources and forum posts. Reliable witnesses, including Deputy Marshal Joe LaForce, Sheriff Ed Smalley, Deputies Richard Proctor and Leslie Snow, two physicians, John Coble, and the Irwin brothers, Charles and Frank, witnessed the execution. They saw Tom Horn go up the stairs, had his arms and legs strapped, a hood placed over his head, and then he stepped onto the trap. And he was executed in what was called a Julian gallows, in that it relieved the people in charge of any one person being responsible for the death, because the condemned's weight on that trap started water flowing, and when a sufficient amount of water had entered the next stage, the trap opened and dropped the accused. And because they had miscalculated Horn's weight, his head and shoulders remained visible. It took 30 seconds for that trap to trip, which had to be a long 30 seconds. Horn was probably the most composed person at the event. He was joking with some of the people there, asked one guy if he just got married, where everybody else was, as you would think they would be, a little concerned about being involved in an execution. So took 20 minutes before his heartbeat stopped, but he was apparently unconscious, because that's the role of that big knot in the hangman's rope, is to break the neck when he falls. So a coroner's jury examined the body, signed the death warrant. Tom's older brother Charles took possession of the body, took it to Boulder to be buried, and he reluctantly acceded to multiple requests and allowed an open casket viewing. So, yeah, they hanged the right guy, maybe for the wrong reason, because that's still debated. Here's another one. While awaiting the outcome of an appeal, Horn spent his time braiding a rope and writing an autobiography. His appeal was denied. He was hanged using his own rope on November 20th, 1903. And this is from a site, userpages.org.com/B.Dobson/Horn. Hangman used a very specific type of manila hemp rope. It would be soaked in water and then suspended with heavy weights on the bottom. The goal being to take all of the stretch, all of the remaining stretch, out of that rope, which would facilitate the execution, again, with that traditional 13-wrap hangman's knot. So no hangman is going to use a horsehair rope. One site said it'd be equivalent. Are you going to let somebody build their own electric chair? Well, probably not, and they're not going to use Horn's horsehair rope to hang him with. This is one, Willie Nickel, who was the 14-year-old boy who was shot from ambush, and Horn was convicted of the killing. Willie Nickel was wearing his father's coat and hat when he was killed. One source said his father's slicker. Well, Willie was wearing his own clothes. Deputy U.S. Marshal Joe LaForge, in his book, Wyoming Peace Officer, said that he went to the Nickel home a couple days after Willie was murdered. And Mrs. Nickel showed him Willie's blood-stained coat hanging next to his father's coat. So, no, he was not wearing his father's coat. He was, or hat. He was, however, riding his father's horse. Here's one. In July 1876, when Tom was 15, Al Cyber, chief of scouts of the 5th Cavalry, hired him as a Spanish-English interpreter at the San Carlos Indian Agency in southern Arizona. Well, as I said before, Horn was at the San Carlos Agency by 1881, but he would have been 21 years old. And if he was 15 and ran away from home or left home when he was 14, how did he learn enough Spanish in a year to be hired as an interpreter? That one really, and that's repeated several ways. That's from Chip Carlson, Blood on the Moon. And here's a WyoHistory.org article by Chip Carlson, published November 8th, 2014. While still in his teens, he went to work for Al Cyber, chief of scouts at the U.S. Army in the campaigns against the Apache. Again, I found no evidence of Horn in Arizona until 1881, when he would have been 21 years old. I can put him in Cripple Creek, I can put him in Leadville, I can put him in Kansas, but nothing showed up about him being in Arizona until 1880, 1881. So this is from, there's several articles talk about him being there in his teens. Here's one from Spartacus-educational.com. In 1882, Horn joined the U.S. Army and took part in the Tupper Rafferty-Indemito fight in Sonora. The following year, 83, Horn was recruited by Cyber as a scout on the Sierra Madre expedition led by Major General George Crook. So in 1885, Horn was appointed Chief of Scouts for the pursuit of Geronimo in the Sierra Madre and was involved in Geronimo's capture in 1886. So I think that's true and an accurate statement. And I believe that at 15 or 16, he was still home in Missouri. And again, a lot of this is people who took Tom Horn's autobiography to be a true and accurate accounting of his life. It's interesting that he stopped this autobiography at the time that he came to, before he came to Wyoming. So it only covers his experience in the Apache Wars. So, okay, what do we got here? He fought in the Battle of Big Dry Wash in 1882. And this is from a post, A Short History of Tom Horn, 1861 to 1903, by the Rim Country Museum in Arizona. The Battle of Big Dry Wash, also known as the Diablo Canyon Fight, was fought on July 17, 1882, between troops of the United States Army's 3rd and 6th Cavalry Regiments and warriors of the White Mountain Apache tribe. And here's Will C. Barnes, The Apache's Last Stand in Arizona, The Battle of Big Dry Wash, Arizona Historical Review of January 1931. Tom Horn was not chief of scouts at this time. He was a packer in one of the pack trains at San Carlos. Reliable Army officers have told me that Horn was not in the fight, but was with the pack trains back of the lines. The quartermaster records of Washington have been searched for Horn's record as a scout. They show the one and only time he was deployed by the U.S. government as a scout was at Fort Bowie, Arizona from October 13, 1885 to September 30, 1886. So this comes from different sources. Horn killed dozens of men, if not hundreds, depending on who you're reading. The agreed upon number is 17, and 2 and possibly 4 of those were a case of mistaken identity. Horn shot and killed innocent people. And that number of 17 does not include his action against the Apaches. Some sources say that his first kill was made in Arizona when he shot a Mexican lieutenant, Army lieutenant, in an argument over a prostitute. So here's another one. Horn was a participant or even one of the organizers of the 1892 invasion of Johnson County by a cadre of cattlemen and Texas gunmen. Again, there's no evidence whatsoever that happened. Okay, I think that's enough of Tom Horn myths and legends. Hope you enjoyed that. I realize there wasn't much guns involved. I left these out here so the people who don't like stories have something to look at while I talked. Thanks for watching.